Spotify it out. Oh, you know, I want to play one more thing for you that I didn't get a chance to read in the essay, but there's this crazy piece that Mozart wrote that I feel like was completely inspired by the starling. It's called A Musical Joke. And it's like an hour long, so I can't play the whole thing, but I just want to play you the ending where this is like almost 300 years old, right? And it's in this very proper time where music, you know, had this very kind of specific and aristocratic responsibility. And listen to the way it ends. Okay. Can you imagine like paying $1 million to go to the symphony and like seeing and reading that? Yeah, that's right. Pure cacophony. Yeah, it sounds like a train derailing. That's right. Yeah, I feel like, and I'm not the only person who thinks this, that the musical joke, which is really just, I mean, just a goofy composition, is a total starling jam. Okay, let's see. I don't know, how am I doing on time? Do you want to do the Q&A now, or what do you think, Clint?
I'm going to defer to Will on that one, or sorry, Dr. Donnelly.
I feel like that was kind of intense. I don't want to like overstimulate, you know, but we can do rhinoceros too if you want. It's about 15 minutes.
Yeah, we've got at least a few more minutes if you'd like to, Elena, for reading before we get into Q&A.
Okay. All right. I'm just sort of aware that that's such an intense piece to read, just in terms of like all the information. I don't want to like, and it's Zoom, and Zoom fatigue is real. Can I get an amen, right? Zoom fatigue is a real thing. I don't want to fatigue anybody. Yeah, see, look at all these amens. I tell you what, I'm going to save the art one, the visual art one, and I'm going to read this 8-minute piece. So it's short. And the reason that I'm going to read it is I know that the Introduction to Creative Writing class has a playwriting unit. And one of the things that Dr. Donnelly's students are going to look at is Shakespeare. And I love Shakespeare. I worked as an actor for a long time, and I took any job that I could get so that I could like make enough money so that I could audition and play Shakespeare at least once a year. It was just always a joy for me. And I had to find a Shakespearean animal for this book. And one of the Shakespearean animals I found, I didn't know this, was the starling, because starlings are an invasive species, but they're all over North America. I'm guaranteed that there is a starling on the Barry campus right now. They're, you know, considered to be kind of problematic because they've wiped out native species. And the reason that there are starlings in North America is because this guy wanted all of the birds that Shakespeare mentioned in his plays to live in Central Park. So he brought flamingos and swans and all of these non-native species to Central Park in the early 20th century. And the starlings, like, they just took over. And now there are murmurations of starlings all over North America, thanks to William Shakespeare. But the Shakespeare animal that I decided to write about for the book is named Sackerson. And Sackerson was this bear. And when William Shakespeare was making his plays around 1600, he did so in the Globe Theater. Maybe some of you know about it from study abroad or from travels that you've taken, but it was this amazing sort of octagonal play-making space. And what people maybe don't know is that there was an identical space right next door called the Bear Garden. And what happened in that, it just looked just like the Globe Theater. What happened there was animals were pitted against each other to fight, and people would bet on them, right? Like cockfighting now, or dogfighting, or things that, you know, are pretty atrocious. And there was this one bear that they won time and time and time and again, and became kind of famous. Like Queen Elizabeth was super into him, to the point where he made Shakespeare nervous. And Shakespeare sort of snarkily references him in one of his plays. Shakespeare was a very competitive guy. He mentions a lot of his rivals sort of quietly, like Christopher Marlowe or the Children's Company, this little kiddie theater that was taking a lot of ticket sales from him. But the only rival that he actually name checks in any of his plays is Sackerson. And I just love the idea that whenever, for the past 400 years, whenever someone has done the play, a company has done the play, The Merry Wives of Windsor. This bear that had this terrible life gets its revenge because he's keeping that bear's name in all of our mouths, which I just love. So this is the essay that I wrote about that bear. I wrote it in iambic pentameter, and it takes about 8 minutes to read. And so you just have to imagine that we're all together in this dank, nasty Elizabethan bear garden, and around 1601, the same year that Hamlet debuted. Okay. The London garden, brackish and packed in, was hazy with a dozen kinds of flesh. The bulls, cocks, mastiffs, men, and chimpanzees in air so rickety it lowered the roof. So dark, the line between crowd and beasts was marred. There, in that black, Sir Raleigh took his Frenchmen, and other men of duty met their spies. The reason for its famous fireworks, just so the folks who'd wagered bets could see. A rose of flames pitched high above the crowd fired smoke into the muck that hung about. It spun and spat red bits around the seats. They rigged it to toss pears as it rotated, and the fruit-mad crowd would then jump up and chase the rolling pears out to the bankside streets. Or yard boys, eager in their dirty gloves, would toss hot bread upon the patrons' laps, which made them clutch and scurry toward the exits. Outside, they'd find some other Sunday sport, an archery butt, a woman, or a play. The stews downriver had less fornication, and St. Bartholomew's floors less wet with blood. The bloody muzzle, or the mastiff's blood, the blood of fisticuffs up in the stands, the blood of offal floated down the Thames to Bankside from the abattoirs of town. And by the time the century turned around, it seemed the blood most often spilled was his. But do not think that London's garden crowd imagined him some broken, bashed-in thing. And believe me, this is tricky. I might see the lives of baited bears as nothing but a broken cord of muzzle, chain, and stake, of blunted teeth, barrages of dog jaws, of living out a mongrel just to have another thrown upon the slavered flesh. That rink's the only place that he could run, a hard one, constitutional, dodging bulls and running laps in that dank polygon. That garden, broken even in its flowers. The rosettes they affixed to his brow were bullseyes for the mastiffs when they jump, and jump they did, mouths tearing at the flesh that leered at them from each side of the bloom. They bit so hard that London citizens grew up thinking of bears' eyes to be pink. Few years of that, he was too blind to fight. The bear ward had to get creative then. Chained center, hunkered, lashed by volunteers until the blood ran rivers down his spine. Sometimes he'd raise his matted arms and gnash about the lash until it snapped in half. And once he stooped low to the lazy knot, untied himself with effort from the stake, then nosed about the rink in backward loops to hear the ladies scream, the bearward scramble. They dragged him offstage to his pit in cheers. For even then, near lame and sightless, he could still throw 9 stone mastiffs to the crowds, up to the boxes, to the ladies' laps, bypassing pumpkin hose and straight to the skirts, like he could sniff a woman's quivering thigh and hurl the big dog, head or tail, right to her. A snort, a twitch to shudder the dog's spit, a fling, a lady's lap, a going, "Ooh!" And then they'd add another dog, then 2, till 6 or 7 mastiffs lined the rink, the sound more deafening since his sight was gone. Confounded if he wasn't still around. They could have put his picture on the money. Elizabeth, who never said hello, loved him, enough to ban all Thursday sport. Upon the mildest Thursdays, he'd parade out past the playhouse, down to London Bridge. He'd smell the rag men, actors, punks in stews who yelled at him in ripe cacophony. The bulls in ribbon horns all marched behind. The cocks in boxes and the dogs behind. The only bear who ever led the dogs. And even on his nights off, he appeared in name checks at the Hope, the Rose, the Globe, a dactyl in the mouths of water poets, the only rival Shakespeare called by name. In Jonson, in Act 5 at Dunsinane, at Middle Temple Hall on Candlemas, when Chambers' fairest boy in fake dugs crooned, "Have you not set mine honor at the stake and baited it with all the unmuzzled thoughts that tyrannous heart can think?" So, it'd be wrong to match that bear with breaking. They built him up They called him out by name because they read in him a secret code both terrifying and recognizable. They saw it in his stance, up on 2 legs, the 4 paws spread, the 10 claws digital. They saw it in his low-slung hips and gut, the way his pupils, round and beady, lived inside a circle of expressive white. And milliseconds prior to the bite, they saw it when he bowed his head and sighed. What did they see? They saw themselves, of course, a taller man, more leaden and hirsute, with thick skin better suited for a beating, but still their bear, this massive chestnut frame dwarfed tiny by a darkened ring of foes. A smaller ratio of the rink itself dwarfed by the river, flowing to its north, that lurid, pestilent Thames. 6 city plagues, the pox, the new ague, the curious sweats, all floated past their bear garden in leagues, a river of unprecedented sick. In 92, things got so royally poxed, the playhouses were forced to shutter up, a quarter of their population down each decade, give or take 100 score. And a blighted age can make a garden blind. Each ticket holder turns left, right, behind, then wonders what part of their, and wonders, this is just, I haven't read this since the pandemic, and I'm like, oh, this is, this is hitting kind of close to home. Okay, a blighted age can make a garden blind. Each ticket holder turns left, right, behind, and wonders which part of their dark quartet will suffer an unnatural upset next. For when our clans explode up into towns, the backbite comes from nature, and it smarts. The devil holds back nature by its ears, takes aim, makes wager, then releases it. We toss it off and it regenerates. 6 natural mouths leap forth before we're primed. Parades of sickness cannot be explained by any learned clansmen, physics, priests. The inexplicable can send us toward an unclanned occupation with the self. And selves, like famous bears, are singular. We are soon switches places with I am. And then clans bewitched by I ams become crowds, which are an altogether different thing. He heard those I ams in the garden's roar. I am this bear, stuck in this blighted rink, beset upon by nature's ticking clock. I am not hunkered down in numbered packs. Instead, I am awaiting death alone. I am afraid of time's encroaching power. For each new year, I am more bluntly struck. I feel pain, feel it doubling, then I am it. I am always in wait of time's new teeth. And though befuddled, drunk on sick, I am unfit to tear mine eyes away from him. The growl of him, his mighty swipe, his blood, the way he foams both in and out of hours. My chain of foes would weigh less, I am sure, if I could toss off minutes, break pain's spine, or send plague squealing to a bitch's lap. For even if I knew more time, more sick was at the go, it'd be a righteous salve to fight whatever hours on me now. To discard the sick dog of what is now, to throw it, a contaminated rag stained with the gusto of my intellect. Yes, I am jealous of his natural acts, and so I'll hit his nature with a stick. And that chipper little ditty is Sackerson. I forgot that there was a plague in that essay. Woo! Thank you very much for listening to that. I think that was a good, solid 30 plus minutes. So pat yourselves on the back if you're still alive after all of that. What's next, Dr. Donnelly?
Well, I think at this point, thanks so much. First off, that was really wonderful. Yeah, I wish we could.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you in the comments for your nice words. I appreciate it.
For applause, right? We can do that.
Yeah.